Good morning, distinguished legislators, coordinator, past president of Nigerian Bar Association, the original wicket of Nigeria, who will be our primary resource person today. I welcome you, sir, and I welcome everybody online. We are aware that we have honorable justices of the High Court and the Appellate Court, and we recognize it from here. All our distinguished legislators, advocates, colleagues, journalists, and friends, welcome to one of our quarterly webinars organized by the Rule of Law Development Foundation on a very, very vital aspect of our democratic processes. This topic will be looking at the critical analysis of the Electoral Bill 2021. We are looking at its value to Nigeria's democracy, comparison with Electoral Act 2020. And we have given the lead presentation no other person than our own coordinator, Mr. Bobby Bensonabito, who in his own right has been at the forefront of several matters which have involved interpretation of several provisions of the Electoral Act. So I'm sure we'll be looking forward to hearing from him on some of the areas of the Electoral Act that this new bill has, possible implications for the policy, and why it has still not been passed by National Assembly, originally in the interest for it to be passed by National Assembly. And we're looking for a very interactive contribution to this topic. We also have, that will be discussing this paper, we have with us, and I'm sure they will join us, we have one of the commissioners, national commissioners of the Independent National Electoral Commission, who is also president of the Rule of Law Development Foundation, the person of Justice Esquire. Esquire. I'm aware he will be joining us very soon. But we also have a level senior advocate of Nigeria and a former director, leader at the Independent National Electoral Commission, President Nigerian Bar, senior advocate of Nigeria. So you can see we have experience, personality to discuss this very topical area. Without much ado and without much protocol, we recognize everyone and trust us to allow everybody to circulate their position. So for and if your hand are not free, let us give a round of applause to our keynote speaker. Let us give him a round of applause as he gives us his position paper on the Electoral Bill 2020. Particularly in welcoming our coordinator to present this paper.
Thank you very much, Paul. Thank you for here. I'm now with the previous discuss this highly sensitive and indeed topical issue, which one of the issues that is political environment. I have presented, put down my thoughts, a document, which probably at the end of the day, hopefully, demand for copies may outstrip the supply. I'm also warning that we have copyrighted it. And all those videos and photocopy use some other means of reprographic to extract the content and find themselves falling foul of the Copyright Act. Piracy is an offense in the Internet electoral material. So you can always get a copy for the paltry sum, very subsidized sum of 1,000 naira. Now, as I have the floor, I intend to take you through the topic in such a way as to leave us with no doubt at the end of the day as to my position on the subject matter. Now, the topic is the electoral thing 2021, a critical analysis of its value to Nigeria's democracy in comparison with the Electoral Act 2010 as amended. Now, I intend to go through the entire part of the introduction so as to give us a clear idea of what the subject matter is about. And then from then onwards, stop with the paper and only read where it's absolutely important to capture the words in the manner I have expressed it to the audience. I must say that I take full responsibility for you and opinions held on some of the topical issues. If you find it really need just one or two. Introduction. Nigerians have always been passionate about the electoral process. How holders of offices set out by the Constitution are chosen through universal adult suffrage. These offices range from those of the President and Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces, the Vice President, the federal legislators, senators, and representatives at the federal level, governors and members of their respective houses of assembly, and the products of the democratically elected local government system known as local government organization. So this is a nutshell of the elective offices recognized by the Constitution. There is an awfully expensive, excruciating, and indeed cumbersome process involved in the electoral process of these high offices, the process of getting them campaign into office. And their broad duties and functions have been summarized in sections 4 and 5 of the Constitution. What that does is that section 4 deals with the functions of the legislature, especially that we have the powers to legislate for the peace, order, and good government of the Federation or any part thereof. And we are into the state legislature, it's empowered to legislate on any matter not included in the exclusive legislative legislation, meaning any matter in the concurrent executive and all other residual matters. As for the president, which is the most powerful office under the Constitution, he can exercise executive power, govern for the peace, order, and good government, either directly or through his vice president or through ministers of government, the Federation, and other officers of the public sector. So, in a nutshell, the buck stops on the president's table. However, he can delegate even in the condition to discharge some of his presidential duties. So when people are carrying out presidential office, people are saying, what is the president? 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 I usually consider it an incomplete because you are failing to hear from the people when you have several other people that will pick and start to agree. But at the end of the day, the only distinction is whether anybody says on behalf of the state, the state is going to say. It's not when people come and say this is the president, this is the president. Anything said on behalf of the president has been booked. The 1999 Constitution, as amended, deals with the requirements needed to occupy elective office. These ones are referred to the board. It also stipulates or designs the fundamental features of the electoral system, such as political parties, INEC, Independent National Electoral Commission, and the establishment of the basic provision and establishment of the electoral election tribunal. As expected, the basic law of the land, which is the Constitution, only dealt with the core provisions pertaining to electoral process and left the details and other requirements in between the lines to the National Assembly to enact a more comprehensive and indeed specialized legislation, known concerning more than. Now there have existed, still exists a litany of electoral legislations from the colonial era to date. Some of them heralded in the Fourth Republic, that is 1999 to the date, and others were employed to conduct the general elections held respectively in years 2003, 2007, 2011, 2015, 2019. Now, because of the volatile nature of electoral in Nigeria, the election umpire, that is INEC, usually sits in several steps ahead of the political class, who will rather prefer to impose their own will on the electorate rather than abide by the decision of the latter. In other words, if you leave the constitution to this control the process, of course, they will return themselves to those offices time and time again without regard to whether they are the choices. Therefore, the desire of the political class to self-perpetuate themselves as their political destiny through acts and diverse ways of living called electoral method. This discourse is not about identifying all those methods people have perpetrated or perfected in this new election. It is about how the Electoral Bill 2020 has come up with remedies in the previous lacuna and all loopholes and imperfections apparent in the 2010 election application. Now, we must consider an ideal country we need to have specialized up-to-date legislation to deal with all the shenanigans the factors of corruption and ethnicity, which have led to the stunted economic, political, and cultural growth of the Nigerian society. It has also infiltrated the space of good governance, where politicians see elective office and indeed non-elective office as their opportunity to boost the economy of funds for development projects and projects. The availability of the so-called easy money from politics has attracted a great number of vicious, unscrupulous, and unconscionable politicians who have no qualms or second thoughts before compromising the electoral process for their eventual benefit. Now, conversely, those at the helm of affairs are aware that the government and other informed observers know of their penchant or proclivity, that is, of their fascination to ensure that the system is transparent, that is, the electoral process. And therefore, INEC, the electoral empire, and the people always insist that there should be ingenious approach where not so much as cosmetic changes or even lip service are made to have a free, fair, and credible election. So that is where the behemoth, INEC, comes in. This is the body charged with the conduct of, wait for it, free, fair, and credible election for virtually all elected offices, including the offices that do not organize elections. The ones organized by the state independent electoral commission, organized local government, and in such situations you find that it's a one-party affair, one-party everything. INEC is even doing better. Same for them. The CX definitely answer to the master's work. Who the master is, we all know. Now, INEC must conduct free and fair and credible elections because virtually all its actions and decisions, including the conduct of elections, are subject to judicial review. What I mean by judicial review is that INEC's actions are subject to court intervention. Dissatisfied parties who may or may not agree with the I just use this opportunity to welcome Mr. Jamba once again. He's done, I've not missed him. Very well. I've had the perfect complete. You're welcome. Now, we're going to go on to the next part, which is a short history of the legal regime of electoral laws between 1928 or 1920. Now, at page 3, we have set out the table which contains all the statutes that govern elections since the advent of elections in Nigeria to the elections that resulted in the Fourth Republic up to 2020. They are listed here below. I ask that you come on the screen. This night, so see, it contains every legislation used from 1920, 1923 up to 2020, and they are quite many. Now, like you come on your screen, the display above of this litany of electoral laws shows that from time immemorial, Nigeria has been a nation whose electoral process is governed by statute law. The problem has always been that no sooner innovations to electoral statutes are put out in the public space than political actors master the techniques to circumvent these innovations. It is the late literary icon Professor Chima Akido allegorized through a naked debate that since men have learned to shoot without missing, they have also learned to fly without touching. INEC therefore has mastered the art of introducing remedial amendments to the Electoral Act, which either exposes certain weaknesses in it or pegs loopholes that the political class exploited in general election issue. And at times it even introduces innovations into the electoral process. That is to say that amendments to electoral statutes are normal and is usually expected to be introduced by the executive arm of government early enough so that stakeholders can acquaint themselves with the adjusted position of the law on the subject. The trajectory of our electoral process after the last military explosion in power has been quite rough. However, a definite pattern appears to have emerged. The powers that be and the electoral law by INEC have all along treated the process of electioneering as being evolutionary, meaning that no one version of the Electoral Act has the ultimate, immutable, and paramount solution to electoral practice, which is usually frowned upon in the antithesis of a credible election. It is apt at this stage to identify some of the areas where political agencies take on the road towards the election. What I'm going to do in the next few questions is identify areas that are prone to electoral malpractice, to rigging, and to manipulation by all the stakeholders. And I will go in detail in the first one because it's very important. It represents the foundation or the bedrock of areas where politicians are prone to exploiting, and that is registration, accreditation of voters, and the smart card reader. The electoral process does not consist of merely what happens on the voting day. When ballots are cast for contesting candidates, the votes counted and the results declared after collation is the taking of other fail-proof measures to avert cheating and the publication of incorrect results. The steps or processes earlier on undertaken by INEC include A. Registration of voters nationwide, B. Maintenance of voters registered, manual and/or electronic, accreditation of voters, and C. The use of the smart card reader, and C. To eliminate or reduce incidences of multiple voting or ballot stuffing, both of which are blatant ways of rigging elections. The way and manner a voter exercises his franchise is to report, I'm now describing the electoral process in summary, is to report to his polling station or designated polling station with his voters and present same to the presiding officer at the arrival. He is expected to undergo a screening process of matching the details on the voter's card with the details in the register before the presenter is allowed to cast his vote. In the past, unauthorized and other dubious persons were in the habit of obtaining multiple voters' cards through fouling and then engage in ballot stuffing. But the card reader brought to an end, or supposed to bring to an end, these conduct. The menace caused by the illicit use of the voters card and the process of authentication of voters led INEC to introduce what an electronic system of authentication and authentication of voters alongside the existing manual system of authentication, which is by the presiding officer keeping the name and the total after comparing the details of his card to those of the digital voters. Now, the smart card reader in INEX view ought to be conclusive in the resolution of any dispute as to A, the total number of accredited voters in the polling station, B, the total number of voters, 15 voters, C, as to any other information. Now there are some Supreme Court cases investigated on the value and the legality and the scope of the smart card. Some of these cases are listed W against the character against the master, and Newton, UK Newton and Peterson. Now the effect of this decision lament regrettably that the Electoral Act 2010 does not contain any provision authorizing the use of the smart card. However, the rules, the INEC guidelines for the 2019 election brought in the smart card reader. But we all know that the guidelines are a subsidiary legislation, and the subsidiary legislation cannot go beyond and above what the substantive legislation provides. Now, the substantive legislation, which is the Electoral Act, designates the manual voters register as the principal method of ascertaining things like accredited voters, those who voted in excess. You can only discover that through the manual register. But then lately, that was the mistake which the smart card reader was introduced to correct. Because how the smart card reader works, once the person blocks it, and at the end of the day, it is only those who have been recognized and these impressions and other details tied with the electronic voting that will be addressed as being accredited. So a lot of particular elements get it. But the elephant in the room is that it is not one of the hopes and aspirations of those who are passing the new electoral bill expeditiously debated and discussed and passed and extended is that the smart card reader should be made part of the further substantive law. Now, the tardiness and somewhat delay in getting but it is an issue that is essentially on the table for consideration. How do you eliminate the process through the use of registration or accreditation of 1.5 or 1.5? That I just like to quote what his lordship was the audio of said in the paper he presented smart electoral. But I think it is ridiculous for Nigerians to rank themselves highly in terms of education, exposure, and knowledge. But when it comes to matters that affect the electoral system, which had direct impact on our government, we insist on remaining analog. Certainly, persons who want a loophole to enable them continue with the manipulation of the system may resist the inclusion of the smart card reader in the electoral act. It is time for INEC to take definite steps to further amend the Electoral Act 2010 to incorporate this scientific method of authentication of voters, which is learned from our field. May I humbly suggest, quoting that in making the amendment, INEC should not restrict itself to only the smart card reader machine. The amendment should make ambitious and ample provision, and wait for it, full electronic accreditation, voting, and transmission of election results. It will now be left for INEC to know what equipment to deploy at every turn, depending on other factors in the country, like infrastructure, network, finance, and so on. But let the enabling legislation be in place so that we do not have recourse to the grueling procedure for amendment on this same matter in future. In the court. While the foregoing suggestion of the Honorable Jurist cannot in any way be discountenanced or faulted, it is submitted that they can be advanced further. It is submitted that great caution must be taken by the National Assembly in the quest to enthrone or superimpose by way of the proposed amendment to the Electoral Act the contents of the card reader over and above the manual register of voters kept in the custody of INEC in the event of an appropriate electoral dispute. The truth is that Nigerian environment in which the card reader is to be applied may not sustain or enhance the efficacy of the card reader machine. The question to ask is what will become of the data in the card reader when A, power in the machine runs out and there is no electric power to charge it. B, the card reader machine itself fails to work as it has done on several occasions. Remember, in 2015 when President Goodluck 3 times unsuccessfully tried to vote using the card reader machine. So if it can happen to the President of Nigeria, and who can it not happen to? Or there occurs system failure with the servers to the machine, or any other technical problem surfaces, which will have the effect of complicating the process. Obiora hinges his suggestion and encouragement on the full electronification. I can tell you that that is my own calling of the word. When I checked the dictionary, I found that it accepted it. So the word electronification is valid. Of our electoral processes on what obtains in the United States of America first. And he quotes, "We all watched and marveled at the beauty of electronic transmission of election results during the November 2020 election in the United States of America. I do not see any reasons why such cannot be replicated in Nigeria." End of quote. With respect, comparing the Nigerian system with those of an advanced nation will certainly be our undoing. Our attitude to anything progressive is this: we lack the requisite level of discipline as those in other countries. For some time now, we are only garnering or generating just below 4,000 megawatts of electricity. When what we require to be able to carry out an election based on electronic transmission in all ramifications is not less than 60,000 megawatts of electric power. These and other logistical nightmares bedeviling the Nigerian system will militate against anything electronic in our electoral system. By way of emphasis, it is important to point out the following factors militating against e-voting and e-transmission of results in the current Nigerian dispensation. Necessary we go through because the crux of the amendments in the Electoral Act is e-voting. I said, one, there is no evidence that any country operates its universal adult suffrage by internet or electronic means of voting. The basic tool of voting is the ballot paper. It may be completed by mechanical means, but voting by electronic means is not practical. Two, there is no known verifiable procedure for ascertaining the sanctity of electronic or internet voting, both before poll or after the election. All that is known is that even in situations where the voting population is less than 50,000 accredited voters, i.e. the NBA elections, the outcomes have always lacked legitimacy because of concerns at the back end of the server, which is prone to alleged interference from interested persons in charge of the control of the process. Now, I have used this as an example, not to say that there was actual rigging, but because nobody can control what goes on at the back end or within the server or with hackers, that elections by electronic means lack legitimacy and gives room for all sorts of doubts to be cast on the process. So that is the sense in which I use the NBA elections as an example. However, because we have never had any post-mortem in an election, it is impossible to uphold or to set or to just put aside the complaints as to the legitimacy of the election. But these are even elections that the voting population is less than 50,000, not less of a nation, and we have a voting population of about 70 million. Thirdly, there is a huge risk of imposition of results by even foreign and domestic parties. Now, who are we to say foreign elements will not interfere with our results when even great countries like America are weeping that one other superpower is manipulating their internet to give them false results? Now, talk less of us, who we don't invent this, we don't manufacture it. So ours is just to import and use. And so whatever is already programmed for us in the system is what will appear as our results. So there is that risk of imposition of results and the hijacking of results at any stage of the electronic process. Fourthly, the computer which has been partially covered here, and the judicial process for the determination of the election. Now, what I have done here is to explain as crudely as I can the process of voting and collation of results as prescribed in the Electoral Act of 2010. I have dealt with the issue of authentication of voters and card reader. I have dealt with the card reader authentication. The actual voting procedure has been dealt with, and the collation of election results, which is manual and by the runner system. When you finish counting here, this is polling station A, and the collation center for this seat here, maybe in Metama, you will then have a runner take it there, you collate. Well, this part has dealt with collation of election results, and I said that the existing procedure for collation is not electronic. I think the case being made by interested stakeholders is that if you have a central server from where everybody sends, so that this runner system, the man who runs and goes to submit results, and in between there may be changes and other funny activities, is what puts people on the edge. And so we have that, and we'll deal with that soon. Then I've dealt with the various elections: collation for the House of Assembly election, collation for the House of Representative election, and collation for governorship election. And have referred specifically to the laws or to the sections of the Electoral Act and the sections of the election guidelines that deal with them. When you do get this material, I'm sure that you're going to make some sense out of where we are headed. Then the next portion is the role of the judiciary in the determination of post-election. That also is not difficult, because we recognize that no election, Section 133 of the Electoral Act says that no election or return to an election under this Act shall be questioned in any manner other than by the petition complaining of an undue election or undue return, which shall be presented to the competent tribunal or court in accordance with provisions of the Constitution or of this Act, in which the person elected shall be joined as a party. So we have set out what the procedure is. We challenge the grounds upon which the petitioner can rely on, the role of the Court of Appeal and the Supreme Court. We need to notice we will take note of the various functions of the existing court, the practice and procedure applicable in those courts, the grounds for questioning elections, which we have dealt with in extension. So, having taken those three aspects of what we will now juxtapose when we are dealing with the electoral law and set out the law on those things, it's now time to see if there are any existing amendments being proposed in the National Assembly by the interested stakeholders. Please bear with me, this aspect is important. And so I would like to take you through it as deliberately as possible. We are at page 17 now. Earlier in this presentation, it was observed that with each passing election, general or otherwise, more flaws are detected in the prevailing legislation. Consequently, as the electoral process is a continuing one, pragmatism requires that the lawmakers keep abreast or up to date with the emerging gaps and loopholes in electoral law. That's the existing electoral law. Furthermore, developments in technology and science made to the tools or handmaids of the electoral process usually demand that these innovations are introduced by ways of election. And you can note between 2015 and 2019, there has been clamor for legislative intervention in three broad areas. One, the creation of additional polling units, which INEC has gone ahead to create. The introduction of electronic voting and collation, and three, the creation of an electoral offenses commission, which is an innovation of the race panel, for which all successive administrations shied away from implementing. And then fourthly, the improvement in the quality of justice delivered for election position. So those are really the four main areas we need to examine whether the electoral bills have done any justice to it. I continued by saying all stakeholders, including most of the Nigerian electorate, whether of polling age or otherwise, agree that the time is overdue for introduction of measures which will enhance the credibility of elections, whether such innovations are introduced by way of amendments to the extant existing electoral law, or by the enactment of a brand new legislation, repealing and reenacting a much improved electoral act. It has also been discussed above that now is the time to statutorily recognize the use of the innovative card reader machine by making it an integral part of our electoral law. Once beaten, they say, is twice shy. Prior to the 2019, Nigerians clamored for these innovations to be made promptly in the 2010 electoral act. As a result of lethargy or deliberate political strategy aimed at perpetrating the status quo, meaning all these big English is to say whether the refusal to bring in these innovations at the tail end of before the 2015 election and the 2019 election were deliberate so as to ensure that let this business continue the way we have been doing it. Don't let us come and bring anything that will surprise us. So the defense of the executive arm of government at that time was that the Electoral Amendment Bill, which was eventually passed by the National Assembly, had to be shelved or vetoed by President Buhari because, according to him, there was insufficient time between its presentation for assent and the ability and the time within which to implement the content of the said amendment. That explains why there has been tremendous uproar. Now people are really apprehensive that the same thing is going to happen in 2023, 2 years to the time. The excuse the last time was that there was insufficient time. It was programmed to come at the tail end when the elections will be conducted. But now there's enough time, yet there's that same degree of go slow on the matter. So there's been uproar against both the legislative and executive arms of government for failure to introduce and follow up on the necessary electoral reforms needed to bring about a fair and credible election in the year 2023. The phrase, making haste slowly, may be applicable to this situation at hand. There is no doubt that the Ninth Assembly, that's how they call every national assembly that comes after a general election, into number, is aware of the need to introduce amendments to the Electoral Act speedily, so as to avoid the excuses and repercussions of the last flawed electoral revision exercise. Although the National Assembly is inundated with bills in this regard, it appears that the legislators are engaged in some form of filibuster. That is a political style of ensuring that there is a delay to the passage of a bill or a motion. So, although, yes, this is because, notwithstanding that it is a notorious fact that the National Assembly is swarmed with a cornucopia, or that is a large quantity of bills, desirous of progressively amending the extant Electoral Act, nothing concrete has happened by way of the passage of one Electoral Amendment Bill Act, which will contain all the changes desired by the stakeholders seeking to have a credible, free, and fair election. Now, the table below, and there is a table, and that's the one you should go to. The table below shows that at the moment, as at the time this paper was being written, there were 14 bills in one form or the other at either of the two chambers of the National in our electoral law. The earliest of these bills was introduced in the year 2019. And since then, nothing progressive or conclusive of them have been undertaken by the National Assembly. There is, in my estimation, a perfectly plausible reason why there has not been any progress or traction in the evolution of a sound electoral legislation in Nigeria. I will proceed. It's my own hypothesis, but at the end of the day, you may or may not agree with me. I will proceed to explain it here below. Our political system is rooted in the preeminence of the political party. That means individuals don't really stand election. It is political parties that stand election. That has been confirmed by Section 51 of the 1999 Constitution. The cases of amnesty against Kenya and Falek against Kenya. Nobody disputing. It is the political party that stands election. By virtue, okay, let me read out Section 51. No association other than the political party shall canvass the vote for any candidates at an election or contribute to the funds of any political party or to the election expenses of a candidate at an election. By virtue of Section 234, the political party is enjoined to have its aims and objectives documented, which shall be in conformity with the provisions of Chapter 2 of the same Constitution. In political terms, what this means is that the political party must have a manifesto or statement of its position on all sensitive national issues and a defined political program for the political, economic, and socio-cultural advancement of the country. Nigeria has only about 4 serious-looking political parties. However, our stunted political culture makes it impossible to understand a political party's position on any issue. The ideal situation in the circumstance is for each political party to present through its chief whip or party or party leader a bill that contains all its proposals on electoral reform. Now, what I'm saying here is simple. That instead of every senator to run to the executive, or every honorable to bring his own bill, they have a party. The party should design its position, canvass that position on the floor of the House. At the moment, because you have only two major political parties in the National Assembly, there shouldn't be more than two bills, so that we know the philosophy of each party. Which party likes reading? Which party likes to block reading? We will know immediately. But this excuse for confusion, whereby the House rules or the Senate rules now makes bills introducible by even wolves in sheep clothing. Everybody brings a bill. Now you have 14 bills for electoral reform. As of today, we don't know which one is the master bill. We don't know which one is being considered. Everything is being done hush-hush under the table. That is wrong. These are taxpayers' money. This is money belonging to Nigerians. You cannot come and begin secrecy on a matter that you are using our money for. And so I have set out, and I'm sure it will come on the screen, the 14 bills that are currently before the National Assembly. So I said, shorn of guesswork, no one understands or comprehends what the position of the two main political parties, APC and PDP, so as to promote the entrenchment of credible elections. However, this should not be so. The major political parties are under a duty. They're not begging them. They are under a duty and a responsibility to avail the polity with their clear position on these and other sensitive issues of discourse of national importance. Like I, a simple individual, my position is clear on this. Why the APC or the PDP cannot make its position clear on electronic voting, clear on electronic card reader, clear on funding of campaign expenses of parties is what I do not understand. This hide and seek game will not get us anywhere because it's an indirect way of promoting selfish political agenda as opposed to a national, credible electoral process. Now, so this cacophony of bills will not do anybody any good. Have you been able to identify the 14 bills so that people know it exists? Yes, just slide through it briefly. Yes, these are the 14 bills submitted by some distinguished, some honorables. Now, having seen what the bills are, there are three other critical issues to be dealt with here before we consider the nature of, and indeed, relevance or cogency of the proposed reforms in the bills above. Firstly, like I said, nobody knows which of these 14 bills is being given prominence. We made inquiries, they will not tell us. The latter has not helped matters by concealing information about the passage of the bills, which is the National Assembly. Even when a public hearing is scheduled for stakeholders to come and express their views and position on proposed legislation, they, stakeholders, are not sure which of the bills is coming up for consideration. Secondly, there is great pandemonium in the marketplace of public opinion as to whether all this talk about having a new electoral legislation before the 2023 general election
is not a mere smokescreen, ruse or stratagem to lure adversaries into a false sense of confidence and in the last minute derail the entire exercise, leaving the nation in the doldrums of the 2010 election legislation, which neither inspires confidence nor guarantees a credible election. The preponderance of views is that it will be a massive disappointment and indeed an appalling anticlimax should all this hype leave us without any improvement on the 2010 legislation. Thirdly, this discourse has selected the Electoral Bill 2021, that is the one sponsored by Honorable Aisha Dukku of Gombe State, APC, and which has had its first reading on the floor of the House of Representatives on the 4th of March 2020. However, we noticed the printed copy made available to us refers to it as the Electoral Bill 2021, notwithstanding these discrepancies, which we can overlook. The objective here is to deal with the salient features of the proposed reforms in the bill, juxtaposed against the perceived deficiencies in the Electoral Act 2010. We may now consider an overview of the Electoral Bill 2021. Now, if you again go to the table, there is, we have described the Electoral Bill, that it has 153 sections with 8 parts, while the old bill, the old Act 2010 has 158 sections and 10 parts. And the Electoral Bill is arranged in the following order. And the order is placed on the screen. Same order from establishment and functions of the Commission, staffing, National Register of Voters, procedure for elections, political parties, electoral offenses, determination of election petitions, and miscellaneous. Now, this bill is not an amendment bill. It seeks to repeal the Electoral Act number 6, 2010, and enacts the Electoral Act 2021 to regulate the conduct of all elections as specified in the 1999 Constitution and the Electoral Act. The bill attempts to introduce some critical innovations, especially as it relates to the voting process, which till date has been by paper ballot and the collation of results emanating therefrom. It is clear that there appears to be a preference for what is called electronic voting. Other improvements or outright changes will be identified and discussed hereunder. Part 1 of the bill establishes INEC, and Section 8 makes provisions for the principal officers. We have no problem with these parts. Now, Part 3 provides that the Commission shall keep a register of voters in its national headquarters and other locations, provided that they are kept in A, electronic format, and B, manual printed paper-based record or hard copy. It means, therefore, that the register of voters must therefore be stored or kept in both soft and hard copy formats. Also, by virtue of Section 9(6) of the bill, registration and update of register of voters shall end 90 days before the elections, unlike the old provision of 2010 Act, which provides for 60 days. Section 10(2)(a) of the bill retains all other documents that can be used for the identification of the voter during registration, except baptismal card certificate as a means of identification. So if you are going now to your polling station, don't go with your baptismal card. It will not help you. Section 15 of the bill provides for the power to print or issue register of voters by the Commission to political parties on request. Now, there's a new subsection 2, which was inserted to allow the Commission to consider any objection or complaint with regard to the names on the register within 14 days after displaying the voters' register, or by virtue of the new subsection 5. It becomes an offense for a staff of the Commission to fail to display or publish the voters, and such persons liable to conviction, 100,000 or 6 months. Now, let me take you to the critical area. Under Section 31 of the bill, a new provision was added to provide that where there is a withdrawal or death of a candidate, that the party affected shall within 14 days of such occurrence of the event hold a fresh primary election and produce and submit fresh candidate to the Commission. The provision, though novel, is understandably quite useful in view of our past experience. And the past experiences have been about 3. In 1999, Alhaji Atiku Abubakar was invited to the center to be vice president. Mr. Boni Haruna was his running mate. There was great uproar in Adamawa State that Boni Haruna was not qualified to be governor. However, the Supreme Court held that the interpretation of the law was such that he was a natural successor to the inability of Alhaji Atiku Abubakar to take the oath, both of them having contested for the office on one ticket. And that notwithstanding what they perceived as lacuna in the act, because the act only envisaged a situation of death. And so the Supreme Court reasoning was that death is the highest thing that can keep you away from taking your seat as a governor. And therefore, if that allows the deputy elect to come into power, it follows therefore that Boni Haruna was the right person to take charge. Now, let me use this opportunity. Then you say, why did the same not happen in Faleke against INEC? Now, in Faleke against INEC, there was an inconclusive election. Results had not been declared. In Abubakar against INEC, results had been declared. Atiku Abubakar was just waiting to be sworn in as governor of Adamawa State. But in Faleke, there remained results in certain constituencies to be declared, and therefore there was no deputy governor-elect. Had those results been declared, Faleke would have been governor instead of Governor Bello. And so, at that point in time, since the election was inconclusive, it was necessary for APC to go and get a governorship candidate. Now, INEC by itself introduced a new provision in the legislation saying that for you to be qualified to be governor, you must have gone through all the processes of an election, meaning you must have gone through primaries, you must have gone through the process of selection. Now, a deputy governor-elect did not go through primaries. He was merely an appendage, this thing that when in luxurious bus, they put that one seat down and say you should enter and sit down. It was just a spare tire there. And therefore, since he did not take part in all the stages of the election, it had to be given to someone who had taken part in all the stages of the election, which is the man who took part in the primary. So they merely invited the party to produce the second person who contested in the primaries, and he filled the shoes. Now people are saying, no, there's great injustice, there's this, and there is now a clamor for a change in that position. INEC, I will show you how INEC has decided to get around it in the Electoral Bill 2021. It goes on to say, this provision, though novel, is understandably quite useful in view of past experience in this area. By section 34, subsection 3, the date of a candidate is after the commencement of polls and before the announcement of final results and declaration of a winner. The Commission shall, upon being satisfied of the cause of the death, suspend, and I don't know why they need to be satisfied with the cause of the death. The man is dead, the man is dead. But upon being satisfied with the cause of death, suspend the election for a period of not more than 21 days. And if it is a legislative house election, the election shall start afresh, and the political party whose candidate died may conduct a fresh primary election within 14 days of the death and submit name of the new candidate, provided that in the case of a gubernatorial and presidential election, that the running mate will continue with the election and nominate a new running mate. So you can see the attempt here not to be consistent. If it's House of Rep, go and start afresh. It's not very important. National Assembly. But if it's governorship or president, the running mate does not have to satisfy the requirement of participating in all the stages of the election. By the Electoral Act, he is enjoined now to take over the seat and elect and nominate his own running mate. Well, this is our own area, Malamba. When we get to the bridge, we'll cross it. We don't pray for anybody to die, but when you juxtapose really the constitutional provisions and this proposed bill, there may be arguments further down the road. By virtue of Section 40 of the bill, a new subsection 1 was created to provide the number of electoral wards not being less than 10 and not more than 20 as the circumstances of the local government may require. Notwithstanding this foregoing, I have recommended that the legislature is better advised to retain Section 42 and 43 of the Electoral Act 2010 for reasons that will be obvious in due course. Since Section 42 vests in INEC the power to establish sufficient number of polling units in each registration area, while Section 43 enjoins INEC to conduct a ballot or paper-based election as opposed to electronic voting. This sensitive aspect will be discussed in due course. Section 41, subsection 4 of the bill, the polling agent, accredited observer or official of the commission in attendance at the polling unit may be entitled before commencement of the election to have originals of the electoral materials used by the commission to be inspected. And this process may be recorded as evidence in writing or on video or by other means. This process acknowledges that in the event of a challenge to the election results, that the petitioner can have recourse to the reliance on electronic evidence for purposes of proof of irregularities or non-compliance with the provision of the Electoral Act. This may sound strange, but it's not strange. What he's saying is that there are times INEC supplies what they call sensitive materials. That is materials where you put in results. They're supposed to be serialized and have numbers. Now, it used to happen that there are times that you come to an election, you're given a set of forms, At the time of collation, you see a different set of forms with different numbers. It has now been said, I mean, all the dispute about Section 84 of the Evidence Act, that a video recording of all the officers who received it, showing the forms they received, is admissible as evidence of non-compliance if strange forms turn in at the end of collation and declaration of results. So anything that will be checks and balances is not a bad idea. Now, I said Section 42 of the bill introduces a major alteration, and this is the piece and marrow of this discourse. It removes Section 44, subsection 2 of the Electoral Act 2010, which provides for the format of the ballot papers, that ballot papers will be bound in booklets and numbered serially. And it deleted the words bound in booklets, showing that ballot papers are no longer to be in use at elections, but that voting will be done in soft copies or electronically. Once you delete the word ballot papers in serial number, you have taken away the opportunity of the populace to vote by way of ballot paper. By subsection 3, the Commission shall within 20 days to an election invite in writing participating political parties to inspect its identity logo as it appears on samples of presumably the electronic ballot paper, and such shall be done within, sorry, I hope I didn't jump. Yes. And such parties shall be within 2 days of such inspection in writing. Its approval or disapproval of its identity logo as published by INEC on the prescribed electronic ballot, and unless the party has expressly disapproved of its identity logo, such party can no longer complain of unlawful exclusion from the election under the bill, and the political party that fails to comply with an invitation to inspect is deemed to have approved its identity logo. So even if your identity logo is blank, that means you are not there and you don't complain. That's the way I read it. It means that you are stopped from complaining that you were excluded from the election. Actually, this appears to be one of the only viable points of complaint. Ask any respondent. They get jitters when they grant lawful exclusion. So INEC, I think, has tried to, or the bill has tried to cushion the ground for having additional arguments against those who complain about unlawful exclusion. Section 47 of the bill buttresses the fact that only electronic voting is henceforth to be used for all elections conducted by INEC. It also provides for accreditation at the polling unit and the use of smart card reader or any other technological device by presiding officers for accreditation of voters, verification, confirmation, or authentication of the particulars of the voters in the manner prescribed by the Commission. It went further under subsection 3 to provide that where the card reader or other device fails to function in any unit, and they said fresh card reader is not deployed, that the election should be cancelled and rescheduled within 24 hours. Now, I just want to make a comment before I forget. INEC, in the past 6 years, has been accused of running a regime of inconclusive. There's one song in Kano who was raining about inconclusive election, made a complete mockery of INEC, that everything is inconclusive. Now this will worsen it, because where they just perceive that a card reader did not work and it continues not to work for 24 hours, the result in all that place area will be cancelled and another election conducted. So it gives INEC the room to buy time where it is perceived they have an interest in an election, to buy time and make adjustments in such a way for the preferred winner to come up. This section must be opposed by all politicians. If not, they will find themselves holding the short end of the stick. Section 50 of the bill also deletes the provision of Section 52(2) of the Electoral Act, which provides that electronic voting is prohibited. The snag or gaping lacuna here is that the procedure for electronic voting is how it can be actualized or how it can lead to a free or fair election is nowhere to be found in the said electoral bill, or in any of the versions of the 13 versions left submitted to the National Assembly for consideration. That explains why this bill is shrouded in mystery, as even the political actors are skeptical of leaving such an important matter to INEC. Now, what it's saying is that, in a nutshell, the type of electronic voting that will be adopted is left to the discretion of INEC. As of today, nobody knows the model. Now, no country can leave what is to be legislated upon to the discretion of the so-called umpire. It's either you tell us what you are going to do and put it in statute, and we'll go and prepare for it, but don't tell us that you keep it close to your chest. When it comes to election, you bring out what you think the whole public will use. When we know who is beating the drum at the back for Ojo to be dancing. So it is not, it's a no for that. Either define the way and manner electronic voting is going to be conducted, or you return back to the ballot papers. Now we are now getting into the thick of the issues. The question we have asked is, will future elections in Nigeria be by electronic voting or by a hybrid regime? Now, this is it. As things stand, it appears that INEC, amendment or no amendment, is irreversibly committed to at least the electronic process of registration of voters, accreditation of voters, and other ancillary procedure. I don't think they have the courage yet to be shouting on the rooftop that they are going to subject Nigerians to electronic voting, but they have the plans. So see Section 50 and other sections of the Electoral Bill 2021 referred to above. Section 51, which deals with overvoting, provides that in such situations, the polling agents, and then look at this, overvoting, naturally we'll have a lot of it in electronic voting, because a lot of people will come. When you juxtapose it to the card reader, you have overvoting. Now this is what they say, that the polling agents, please don't laugh, that the polling agents, if there is overvoting, should call for arbitration and try and resolve the matter. And where they cannot resolve the matter, then the presiding officer can nullify the election in that unit. Now, that is their own suggestion. It's very, very, very... Now, it's happened before. When, in the 90s, when we were doing local government elections, there was a similar provision. And I think we were dealing with, what's this local government area? Kateri. There is a local government area that the name Kateri belongs to. So Kateri town itself, the two polling agents were very vicious. And they almost beat up the presiding officer. And at a point in time, presiding officer called them to pacify them in this kind of arbitration, and allocated 50 votes to SDP and 50 votes to NRC. I said, are you all happy? They said they were happy. And he proceeded to do the shenanigans he was going to do and declared results. Later, one party was dissatisfied. So first of all, the tribunal was so upset, it took away the 50-50 votes, which of course didn't add anything to any of them, because the rigging had been done before they offered to give them the 50-50 votes. But the foolish polling agent thought that, there's no problem about that. So this is the kind of thing INEC is trying to return us to the 1990s. And I'm asking presiding officer to call a meeting of polling agents and to decide what to do with overvoting. If they all agree that the overvoting should stay, it stays. And that is the end of the matter. So I think the election tribunals will be very busy come 2023 if you have this kind of retrogressive provisions in the law. Section 60 of the Act deals with tendered ballot paper. They deleted it because, of course, naturally, they are not anticipating that there will be the use of ballot papers. Section 61 of the bill added a new subsection 5, making it an offense for the presiding officer not to count, announce, or give a copy of the result at the polling to the polling agents and police officers present at the poll, and such person shall be liable to a sum of 100,000 or 6 months imprisonment or both. Now, this is making a legislation to secure a system that you yourself have not even laid out as to how it will be done. You are saying electronic voting, but the man will count and give the others result. What is he counting at this point in time? If it's electronic voting of touch screen, so how does he count? It automatically sends the result to the server, and that's the end of the matter. So I think INEC or everybody pursuing this is not yet sure of what it wants, and that's not good for this country. I'm sure that you should be very alarmed at this state of affairs. Section 62, which deals with post-election procedure and collation of results, and provides that the Constitution shall compile, maintain, and update on a continuous basis a register of election results to be known as the National Electronic Register of Election Results, shall be a distinct database or repository of polling unit by polling unit and shall be kept in electronic format at the national headquarters. You all know why this provision was inserted. Because of this server brouhaha of Atiku against Buhari, whether there was indeed a server or no server. My take is INEC has always had a server, and it has always electronically kept the results of the votes. Perhaps on that occasion, they dare not produce the result. But what they have in their favor is that there was no statutory backing as to maintaining results to be taken from the server. It was a manual regime. By subsection 3 of the proposed section 62, any person or political party may obtain from the Commission on payment of the prescribed fee a certified copy of the election results. See section 47 of the Electoral Bill. The gray area, and is underlined here, is the actual casting of votes. INEC's leaning is towards electronic voting. You don't need a soothsayer or prophet to tell you that from what you have heard. But being an expert in electoral processes, it is aware that it is an impossible venture for a developing socio-political entity like Nigeria to dabble into electronic voting. There is no doubt that the government in power also has shown a faint preference for electronic voting. But you see, electronic voting is a Pandora's box. The internet issue and this Twitter affair has shown that you cannot be the master of social media. Brother Lai thought he had social media under wraps when they were campaigning. Now the thing has turned around to bite, and social media is no longer good. It's now fake news. However, this is the same thing with electronic voting. You supporting today may turn out to be the one that will be badly beaten by the scourge of the misuse put to electronic voting. However, the reality, as will be shown here below, is that resort to electronic voting will only set Nigeria backwards and well into the recesses of a retrograde electoral culture, never before seen in any part of the world. Before proceeding, it is necessary to explore the essence of the so-called electronic voting. I'll deal with that. But the real point is here is that let us master what we know how to do. If we are voting by ballot paper, let us at least conquer it first. When we can conduct free and fair election by ballot paper, then we can graduate. Because it's the attitude to voting that is the issue. The penchant to rig. So if you are still rigging with ballot paper, who says that you will not rig with electronic voting, which is a matter of what they call abracadabra, hocus pocus. Just the more you see, the less you understand. So we should be careful, unless, of course, we want, and I don't want to start giving people ideas, to start employing doctrine of necessity and other vague designs to ensure that the country continues with one form of democracy or the other. So electronic voting as a means of voting in Nigeria. And if I deal with that, I'll just draw attention to some other areas and be done so that others can put in their own view. Now, what is electronic voting? Electronic system is a set of rules that determine how elections and referendum are conducted and how their results are determined. The objective of voting is to enable voters exercise their right franchise to express their choices regarding specific issues, pieces of legislation, citizen initiative, constitutional amendments, and choose their government and political representatives. The paper-based open secret ballot voting system, which is operated by most democratic countries in the voting, is the voting system adopted by Nigeria. The essence of introducing this system is to protect the eligible voter from possible persecution, and intimidation. And as it is highly confidential. The Independent National Electoral Commission has disclosed that it may adopt electronic voting in 2021 Anambra governorship election as a trial. I see nothing on the record showing that between now and November, it is ready to adopt electronic voting. However, let us continue. Electronic voting, also known as e-voting, is a system of voting that requires the casting and counting of votes with the aid of electronic means like standalone electronic voting machines. These are the ways that you can do it, or computers connected to the internet. It consists of a range of internet services from basic transmission of tabulated results to full function online voting through common connectable household devices. It may be limited to just marking of paper ballot, or be a comprehensive system encompassing of vote input, vote recording, data encryption and transmission to servers, and consolidation and tabulation of election results. E-voting can include punched cards, And you remember in Bush against Gore, it was the issue of punch cards, the chads, that moved the election away from Al Gore to George Bush. And punch cards are a piece of stiff paper that holds digital data represented by the presence and absence of holes in predefined positions. Optical scan voting systems, an electronic system that uses optical scanner to read marked paper ballots and tally the results. And specialized voting kiosks, such as DRE voting machine, a typical buttons or touch screen that process data using a computer program to record voting data and ballot images in memory components. It can also involve transmission of ballots and votes via telephones, private computer networks, or the internet. The two main types of e-voting are: one, e-voting, which is physically supervised by representatives of government or independent electoral authorities, electronic voting machines located at polling stations. That's one form. Two, remote e-voting, that is i-voting, internet voting, where the voter submits his or her vote electronically to the election authorities from any location. That's like the NBA system, where you can stay in your hotel room in London, Argentina, or United States of America and vote. Can we correct that? Drawbacks. Vulnerability to hacking. These are the drawbacks. These are the negatives of it. You can take out the drawbacks. Vulnerability to hacking. According to the Congressional Research Service, that's America, of election reform and electronic voting systems, vendors and election jurisdictions state that they do not transmit election results from precincts via the internet. So it's a no-no. Via the internet. But they may transmit them via a direct modem connection or the virtual private network, VPN. I'm sure you remember the VPN is not Vice President of Nigeria. However, this approach is also subject to attack via the internet, especially if encryption and verification are not sufficient, because telephone transmission systems are themselves increasingly connected to the internet and computers to which the receiving server may be connected. In other words, all this grammar is that it is subject, or can be subjected to interference and hacking. Two, susceptibility to fraud. Some might believe that tampering with an electric voting machine is extremely difficult. But considering a country like ours, which has had several allegations of fraud, this is very possible. A malicious voting system can be created and distributed by vendors to systematically falsify millions of votes of individuals with the right technological know-how. They can also swap memory card of the machine with their own memory card and put a virus in it. So there's endless possibilities. Accuracy in capturing voters' intent. The sensor in touchscreen devices can be knocked out of alignment by shock or vibration that may occur during transportation and can be fixed by realigning the sensor. In America, they complained that when you press the touch screen and you're voting for Democratic Party, it flips and goes to record Republican Party. All they are saying is that these things can be fixed. Let's put hand on paper and count the paper. Malicious software programming. The software can be tampered with by a computer programmer who alone knows the source code, since all computer software are generated from software coding and programming. Introducing these malicious coding into commercial software that are triggered by obscure combinations and commands and keystrokes via the electronic keyboard, thereby leading to complete change in the election results. So you see, we're just explaining, even from our own layman view, the endless possibilities that are open to tampering with the electronic voting system. Now, these are the challenges. One, legal framework. Constitutional or statutory provisions of acts providing legitimacy for the use of e-voting remains a blatant challenge to adoption in Nigeria and clearly exemplified in Section 52 of the Electoral Bill, which provides thus: voting at an election and transmission of results under the bill shall be in accordance with the procedure determined by the Commission. So that's the section I've been telling you about. That's Section 50. It says it is in accordance with the procedure to be determined by the Commission. In any case, that is not even how to legislate for such matters. You must put down what the procedure is so that we see whether it breaches anybody's right, either to fair participation or whether it erodes anybody's right to vote. With respect, due process and the rule of law compel the clear prescription or identification of a clear-cut procedure for voting as provided for in Section 24 to 27 of the Electoral Act as amended. Earlier on, those areas that I did not read showed what the present procedure is and is covered by Section 24 to 27, which laid out step by step how you cast your vote and how it will be counted. It is not permissible to leave such an important process to the dictates or discretion of the election umpire. That is INEC, that is funded by the government in power. The Nigeria Vision 2020 program restated government's readiness to exploit ICT as a strategic transformation lever. Legal framework is as an indispensable condition, is a foundation and catalyst for INEC and other stakeholders to prepare financial, infrastructural, logistics, human and capital resources for any election. While it is important to review the constraining electoral acts to allow adoption, it is equally important that such a reform be supported by structural changes in other spheres of the socio-political relations to advance the cause of sustainable democracy in Nigeria. Lack of these enabling laws is a major factor hindering the full implementation of e-voting in Nigeria. So you don't have a law, you don't have the process, it is a non-starter. 2, technological and managerial expertise. In Nigeria, comprehensive biometric data for identification and monitoring an election, the basic requisite for e-voting adoption, is lacking. The idea of recruiting and training new sets of staff for every election will be a major setback in a technology-driven process. Efficient use of technology requires constant and continuous training and practice. What is more is that whether the country has the required professional technical staff capable of handling sophisticated technology, such as e-voting, remains in doubt. 3, security and reliability of the technology. Citizens' perception of e-voting security to project individual identity from exposure and tampering, as well as ensuring votes cast are counted correctly, will guarantee confidence and trust before adopting e-process. Otherwise, it dissuades voters from participation in such doubtful processes. Caution must be applied in designing the technology so as to ensure security, confidentiality, and convenience to avoid losing public confidence in not only the technology, but in the entire electoral process. Adequate I think the other system should be switched off. It is full now. Adequate, accessible internet service. A proper electronic voting machine must have a real-time transactional monitoring capability to be able to produce transparent and credible elections in Nigeria. Therefore, it will be difficult to transmit data in a real-time process to or from villages without access to internet and communication network, as transmitting accreditation and result data immediately after the poll. Absence of such infrastructure and its attendant software will enhance instances of electoral fraud, most especially at the collation centers. Then 5, inadequate power supply and other infrastructural setbacks. Electricity, which is a basic amenity and is constant in other countries, is not basic or constant in Nigeria. High voltage electricity is needed to power the machines needed. That will be impossible, but that will be impossible as there is irregular and in some places non-existent power supply. There is also the affliction of low voltage power and sometimes total blackout, which most times takes days, weeks, or months to fix. Now, this is the last part of this. Is electronic voting possible? And the simple answer is this: no, unless other grassroots problems are looked into. Countries like Ireland, Paraguay, Netherlands, and Germany tried electronic voting, but switched back to paper ballots. Ireland dropped plans to use the machines because of security concerns. Paraguay experimented but reverted back to paper ballots. Netherlands also reverted back when e-voting was proven not to be secure through the use of experimental hacking. Germany ruled it out because they were not transparent enough. Consequently, the conundrum facing the Commission, that is located in the dilemma faced by Prince Hamlet in Shakespeare's masterpiece, Hamlet. And the question is, to quote, to be or not to be? That is the question. Interpreting this quagmire simply means that INEC must make up its mind as to whether it wants to serve the interest of Nigerians or the interest of a few political lords of the manor, be it wittingly or unwittingly. That choice is for Nigerians to make for INEC through their elected representatives in the legislature by taking full control of the present amendment or replacement of the Electoral Act 2010. So long and short is that the ball is back to our courts. We should tell our representatives that we do not want to be used as experiments. If top countries like Germany, Netherlands, America, they are not even considering it because they know that it will throw their country to civil war. So back to the Electoral Bill 2021. And so that I can sell these people, I will not go into all the issues that we have raised. All that you can be assured is that there are a lot more juicy issues which are being proposed by INEC in this, and I've dealt with them section by section. There's also the portion relating to electoral offenses. The only point that I will give you there is to say that the penalties have been reduced. Even the serious ones of illegally exceeding funding limits for candidates is merely a slap on the wrist now. And they won't even punish the candidate. I think it's the accountant that will be punished. So you'll find them here, issues about persons elected to remain in office pending the determination of appeals. I think this will be an incentive for you to read the remaining part of the paper. As far as I am concerned, I think I have dealt with all the major areas that bother me. So I'll just read the conclusions, which is at page 44 to 45. Conclusion: the bill seeks to employ electronic registration, electronic storage of data, and information on electronic voting. The use of card readers and electronic voting is something that Nigeria is not ready to handle because we lack the requisite expertise to carry out and transmit results electronically without interference. There are reasons for introducing and including this novel measure is supposedly to ensure free and fair election. But the question is, how free and fair can the process be? Let us take JAMB, simple JAMB examination, for example. Ever since it turned its processes into an electronic one, there has always been constant problems of people hacking into the system, creating grade upgrades, technological problems with the facilities that almost defeated the essence of the innovation. Adopting e-voting is easy to mount, but logistically it will derail our democratic process. Also, one would want to know why the increase in the amount capped as election expenses was astronomically increased from 1 billion to 5 billion concerning presidential elections. I think that can be answered because of the declining value of the naira. Maybe that's why. And the punishment for exceeding such amount limited to 1% of the sum exceeded. Not 1% of the entire sum, but of the sum exceeded. Also, the provision relating to the punishment for an accountant falsifying the records has been reduced from 10 years to 3 years, or option of fine. The message being sent out by the lawmakers is clear, and it is that exceeding campaign limits, spending limits, is not a serious offense. These sections should be amended or deleted from the bill to make the bill a better piece of legislation. All in all, the proposed amendments to the 2010 Electoral Act 2010 must be in good faith. Must in good faith be shown to Nigerians in an open and transparent manner. The current hide-and-seek approach of the National Assembly and even INEC as to the modalities to be employed to ensure free, fair, and credible elections in 2023 leaves much to be desired. All the foregoing stakeholders are accountable to the people of Nigeria. It is therefore expected that their actions must and should be in the overall interest of these great nations. So I thank you for listening.
Let us give our coordinator a resounding applause. I must say this is a piece of literary work that should be on the shelf of not only every legal practitioner that owns his practice in this area, but even to the citizenry and concerned Nigerians. We want to thank you, sir, for this insightful analysis on this very gray area. Now, while you were giving your lecture, one of us came in, a friend of the foundation, a revered senior advocate of Nigeria, Mr. Ibrahim Bawa, senior advocate of Nigeria. Let's give him a round of applause. I dare say he's a specialist in the area of electoral law, both administratively and in terms of case law and his contribution to the jurisprudence. So, sir, you have heard most of what the learned Sikh and former MB president has said on the incoming innovations that may come into our electoral act. So from you, sir, from your own perspective, we would like to hear in the next maybe 20 minutes how you think this bill will impact on us and what your own reactions are, if you have any, to the paper. Let us give him a round of applause, sir.
My boss, my brother, JB Daudu SN, my friends, I thank the foundation for giving me the opportunity to speak on the Electoral Bill 2021 and to add my voice to what my brother has said. I've had a preview of what he just presented. I've read the bill as well. I do not have a prepared paper, so I may not take that much time, but I will do my best to speak on the areas I observed in the bill, particularly having regards to the fact that when you want to do a law that will govern the country, the law must be so specific and understandable to every person that will participate in the process. Here we are, we've seen the flaws in electronic voting in other countries. We believe that we can do with it, and if we must clearly identify the flaws as experienced by other countries and find solutions to them. It is not enough to say that the Nigerian system has some flaws, and we just believe that the best way is to take on electronic process without also looking at the implications of what we're jumping into. At some point in time, when somebody told me, then I was not a field administrator, I just limited myself to drafting the laws and believing I have covered every aspect that will block rigging in the Nigerian electoral system. Because in the laws, I made sure that I made provision because mostly then under the military, we drafted the laws, sent to then there was no National Assembly, we just sent to the military for approval and it will be sent out, churned out as decrees to the country. So I look at what I put in the laws and I said, first, how do we block rigging? And when I started, I said, okay, how do we even start? We print the materials, how are they distributed? must there be people that will oversee the process? And I say, yes, let's look at it. There will be agents that will supervise the process from one aspect to the other until the results are declared. And I was so satisfied with myself that I have done the best legislation that will protect the Nigerian citizens. Unfortunately, when I was told there was rigging in the field, I said, no, I couldn't believe that. And I one time decided to go out as a poll official myself, and I saw that what was in the law was not what was operated in the field. So it is not always the provision in the law, it is even our attitude as it is. The flaws in the Nigerian electoral system is not actually with respect to the provisions in the law. It is with respect to the attitude of the operators of the laws, both from the election management body and the political parties participating in the election. Because as it is, the law as it is, the 2010 Electoral Act, when applied fully, we can have a free and fair election. But unfortunately, what we find in the law is not what we operate when we go to the field. Now, just as the lead speaker said, of a polling unit where the votes were concluded and they decided to share out the remaining ballot papers, I was confronted with two situations. In one situation, I went to conduct an election in Adamawa State. At the end of the process, I was a supervisor, so I was sitting by watching what they were doing. At the end of the election, the presiding officers were approached that the remaining ballot papers should be shared out to the contesting political parties. And unknown to us, when you go to the polling unit, you find that all the people seated, the agents carry tax belonging to different political parties, but in effect, they belong to one or two political parties only. And all the agents agreed on the sharing formula, and I said it will not happen. So that gave me my first experience of the fact that, look, what is in the paper is not what is operated. I went for another election in Ondo State, where I saw another variant of the rigging. First thing was that by the laws, elections are not supposed to be conducted in religious places and all the beautiful stories in the laws. But where we shared the materials was in a church. So the first rule was broken. We sat there, the people were just talking, they were speaking their language, I didn't understand the language. We had only one policeman who had a baton. And there was nothing that policeman could do. When it got to a certain point, and the poll officials were still sitting. I was a collation officer for the ward. I was worried that they collected materials and were sitting there and not doing anything. At the end of the day, I made so much trouble. I said I was going out to monitor the exercise. And the first thing they told me, from the distribution center where we shared the materials to the nearest polling unit, it would take me 2 hours on boat to go there. Meanwhile, it was about 2 o'clock. These people were still sitting there. So when will I go there? When will the elections be conducted and when will I come back? I insisted, after making so much trouble, one elderly man who gathered the others and spoke to them in their language said they should leave the place. They all zoomed up in boats. And at exactly 4 o'clock, everybody was back with the results. No ballot paper was returned unused. So, and I found myself in another problem. After collecting the results, one of the agents stood up to say, "Oga, I don't agree with the result." And I asked why. He said that was not the amount, that was not what he paid for. So now the issue now was there was actual payment for the votes. And he said there was an agreement between them that the votes should be shared according to how much you paid. So you can see that the elections, sometimes you blame INEC, but the problems are with the political parties. When they go to the field, what INEC proposes is different from what the political parties operate on the field. I was stranded there. They left me there because I was a nuisance. At the end of the day, to even come back to the local government headquarters, they didn't allow me. They used some other reasons to hold me ransom there that INEC official who hired boss there didn't pay, and I was now held as ransom. So these are the challenges. When you go to the field, you see something different. So it is not as good as they think in this legislation. They have never thought of the implication of every word they used in the bill. The bill does not clearly identify the procedure to be adopted. When we are going into a new procedure, the procedure must be clearly spelled out so that every person participating will clearly have an idea whether to key into it or not. So to say, yes, at the end of the day, the process will be left to INEC to determine. Meanwhile, nobody has known how we operate the system. Nobody knows how it will be. And if that bill goes through, if INEC brings up a provision and an exercise that we cannot cope with, there is no way we can challenge it. I think we need to look at this bill the way that it will clearly specify. Even for the first attempt, we must know what it is all about so that we know that it is a bill that can be operated. Otherwise, it's a serious dangerous thing we are going into, and it may not lead us to the promised land. We have heard from the presenter, particularly what happens in other crimes. America, that we were trying to borrow from, has had its own share of the hacking. And even the last election, they complained of the fact that some persons were still involved in trying to hack into the system, and the results, it was all clear that President Trump shouted that he was not actually, in fact, indeed, he was rigged out. So if, as advanced as they are, they have not been able to take control over the electoral process using the e-voting, or electronic voting, I think Nigeria should have a second thought about what it is out to do, as this bill may not give us what we desire. Our attitudinal change is what we need to work on. Let us agree that we have problems and we must come together to solve those problems. Otherwise, we will jump from frying pan to fire. I thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Let us give Leonard Silk another resounding round of applause. I assured you that Leonard Silk will come from not only a jurisprudential point of view, but from a practical point of view. And you can see from what Leonard Silk said that it's easy to put so many flowery and various languages in a statute. But what is on ground is different from what some of us who have acted as observers, presiding officers, and the rest see on the field, especially those of us who recently did the NYSC and were privileged, or will I say it's not a privilege sometimes, to be a polling unit officer. Is not a piece of cake. And so we have several issues that have flagged up in the course of this discourse. And the foundation wants this session to be interactive. That's the whole idea of us being here. And I'm made to understand we have several eminent personalities online. Some have indicated by raising up their hands. I know we have Richard Omar Ahanuhoro, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, who has indicated. So if you're online and you can hear me, you indicate you want to make your contribution, please raise up your hand. So far, it is Leonard Silk, Mr. Richard, that has raised up his hand. And so I'll permit him to give us his intervention in 3 minutes. So Leonard Silk, we are connecting you now. Have you done that?
Yes, thank you. Thank you so very much. Good afternoon, everybody.
Leonard Silk, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. I hope you can hear me too. Can you hear me?
I think you better allow most of them that are there. I will indicate to you.
Yes, I can hear
you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me, sir?
I can see him trying to speak.
I can hear you.
While we're resolving that technical issue. Okay. Yeah, you can show us our response persons. Yeah, those that have raised their hands, just allow them once. Yes. So we also have EY Kura, Senior Advocate of Nigeria. I don't know if Mr. Kura can hear me. I'm sure he can.
Paul, I can hear you. I can hear you loud and clear, Paul. I can hear you, Paul.
If you can unmute yourself so that we can have the privilege of your contribution.
Paul, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Go ahead.
Hello, Paul.
Yes, I can hear you. Go ahead.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, thank you very much, Paul. I will first of all commend the organizers of this event, and especially my Ogaji Bidaudu Esquire, SN, who has always, you just think of one thing that is disturbing everybody and just surprise everybody with the discussion on it. Now, the first thing I want to comment on is this electronic voting thing. We've seen experiences on the field which show that most times, if you go for election tribunal matters, even preparation of documents, parties rely on the copies of documents handed over to the agents. And the reason is very simple. INEC, for these results, you may not get them, and if you get them at all, they will be different from what your agents were given. Now, the electronic voting will do away with that. And so politically, if there's a dispute. And you know INEC, with respect to INEC, you see, we honestly, people seem to lose confidence on all the elections organized by INEC, because they seem to take side with the powers that be at any given time. And if you don't have any result, at least that has the semblance of authenticity, you believe at the mercy of INEC. Another issue is that in a situation where INEC will openly deny facts, I don't know whether we can trust INEC. An example is the article have a server, and everybody knows INEC has a server. So if we now say, okay, INEC, we are going to do electronic voting, it is only INEC that knows the result. Whatever result INEC churns out is the authentic result. So that is a very big problem. INEC does not, the people should learn to trust the umpire that is supposed to be neutral. But honestly, in terms of elections, you continue to doubt the neutrality of INEC. with the flaws that have been highlighted by the daily paper. Our political development, my take, is that we are not mature enough for this kind of electoral voting. We are not. The political maturity is lacking. So let's not do things that will even completely destroy the small gains we have made in elections. We can conduct election based on the 2010 Electoral Act as amended. It is ready to do its work. It is not by saying, let's do electronic voting. If you go to my village where there's no light now, and then there's nobody, the INEC staff cannot function, what do we do? There are so many areas like that. So let's not jump into an issue that we will not be able to contain. Thank you, Tuo.
Very much, Leonard Silk. The next.
Hello, Paul.
Leonard Silk, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Okay.
I'll be moving on to the next contributor, who is no other person than Honorable Justice Ajileye of the High Court of Kogi State. My Lord, can you hear me? I understand your hand has been raised. Please, sir, unmute yourself so that we can hear you.
Hello, are you hearing me now?
Yes, I can hear you, my Lord.
Okay, thank you very much, Paul.
My Lord, you have 3 minutes.
3 minutes, okay. First and foremost, I want to appreciate the lead speaker, the coordinator of the Rule of Law Development Program, Daniel Sik, for the illuminating paper. Now, let me begin by saying that one of the banes of our society today is election rigging. Sorry, are you hearing me, please? Hello, are you hearing me?
My Lord, you can go on.
Are you hearing me?
My Lord, we are hearing you clearly.
Okay, good. So one of the banes of our society today is election rigging. And it has been of great concern to everybody. And the National Assembly with INEC are now making efforts to see that there could be a way out. And I believe that is why we have this idea of electronic voting. But after listening to the lead speaker this afternoon, I discovered that I will say honestly that I am scared. And I asked myself, okay, what's next? Where else do we go now? If we have found electronic voting as unreliable as it has been presented by the lead speaker, where else now can we go? So the speaker himself has profiled one solution, and I want to profile another one. I begin with my own. My own is the fact that elections should not be absolutely based on electronics alone. It can be a combination of manual and electronics. Like I think it was the 2019 electoral bill that suggested that at the polling unit, there will be electronic voting, but then there will still be manual recording of the results. And it was provided there then that the result recorded at the polling unit must tally with the electronic result transmitted to the INEC server. So, which means there could be a way of testing the viability of a particular result. That is one. Then coming to the suggestion of the learned Sikh, the whole thing is all about attitude. And he has said that there should be an institutional change amongst Nigerians. If we are determined to make it work, it will work. If we are determined to continue to rig election, we will do everything to see that elections are rigged. And that will not take us to anywhere. So in addition to the efforts of the National Assembly in enacting these laws, I want to suggest that efforts also should be made to work on the attitudes of Nigerians, that we need credible elections, we need credible results. Thank you very much.
Contribution. Let us give my Lord a round of applause. Yeah, he has talked about the hybrid system, but my Lord, later I will engage you. Do you know that it is possible for a rigged election for the system and what is in the result sheets to tally and the election was still rigged? So the next person online is a former national legal advisor to the APC, Mr. Babatunde Ogala, senior advocate of Nigeria. I had told you, Mr. Ogala, first before I take Mr. Richard, because we are having issue with his sound.
Thank you. Can I go ahead?
You can go on, Lenesik.
Thank you very much for. Let me also my president for his very well-researched paper. In fact, I've learned a few things, especially about the failure of the system in those countries we think are otherwise developed. And like my brother Bawa and Milord Adley have said, the problem of elections in our country, it's us, the people. And it is not in the legislation. I dare say, even if it was an unwritten law, and we are determined and committed, after all, we have elections by consensus in some cases, where we are not even following any written constitution, and everybody goes home happy. It is about us as a people. And I must give an example. And I give examples from my position on the seat I once sat on as a legal advisor of a political party in an election season. What I do find is that the problem of election rigging or mismanagement is about the totality of all of us. It's seriously endemic that even those who should be the election managers, and I'm not talking about just the participants, the election managers from the police to the DSS to INEC itself, and all those who are involved in elections see this season as a season to make money. And I just say, no matter how desperate the politicians are, no matter how ingenious the politicians are, if the election managers do not cooperate, they cannot rig elections. They cannot manipulate results. Like Ike Bauer himself said, they said they had agreed to, somewhere in those states, how they were going to share the ballot papers. Who released the ballot papers to them? It is the election managers. I have had experience, I've had instances where even after elections, and even at party primaries level, INEC monitoring reports, it's about the highest bidder, because INEC reports are always also very useful. It's about who pays more. That guess what? They deprive those who don't have money and they give to those who have money. So the election managers, the political class, the voters who also expect to be paid to vote for certain candidates and parties are also part of the problem. So for me, it is not about legislation. We cannot correct this by legislation, but by the attitude, like Milord said, like Ike Bauer said, of us, the people. And here I talk about the totality of us. Let's assume for a minute, we even adopt electronic voting, which would be dependent on electronic transmission. This process will also be controlled by the service providers. I dare say, and I can say this authoritatively, that it simply means in the next round of election, you also factor how you are going to compromise the service provider in the election process. How you are going to make sure, maybe it's MTN, maybe it's Airtel, or whichever service provider is covering an Adamawa state, for instance, how we are going to make sure their services fail on that day so that they cannot transmit. It will just be about ingenuity. So I think, and I align myself with the position of Milord Ajileye and Ike Bauer, that it is about the attitude. Our laws as they are today are not bad. No matter how much we amend, if we do not have this attitudinal change, we will just be wasting time. Our laws as they are not the problem. The problem is not the law. The problem is us, the people, the election managers, from the security bodies, the electoral body, the political parties, the participants, and above all, the populace, the voters. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Leonard Sick. We've taken a lot from the. I think you have hit the nail on the head. Sometimes these elective offices is as if there is a goal at the end of the Rubicon. So the fight for elective offices sometimes involves ingenious means, because at the end is a race for us to loot. Unfortunately, that's the current position. So we take the next person, who is no other person than Richard Omar Ohanuoro, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, based in Lagos. I'm sure he's talking to us from Lagos. Leonard,
thank you so much.
So please, your contribution.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you in 3 minutes. Let us hear you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. May I start by commending also our past president and the founder of the Rule of Law Foundation, Mr. J.B. Joseph S.N., past president, Nigerian Bar Association. I also thank my brother Silk, Mr. Ibrahim Bauer, who is with you right there, and also my lords, my learned friends of the inner and outer bar, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. My name is Richard Omar Honarogo. I will not go into the rest for now, but I would like to start by commending the Rule of Law Foundation for being consistent in bringing these programs to the fore. Let me say that the proposed electoral bill of 2021 has been most ably illustrated by the lead speaker, Mr. J.B. Daudu SA. I propose that we have a provision to void elections on the basis of electoral malpractices, and that the political party that benefits from electoral malpractices adjudged in that void election be excluded from a rerun or further election in respect of that same election. In other words, if party A is adjudged to be the party that caused the malpractices that has led to the election being voided, that party should be excluded in that same election for that office. I think that should be number one deterrent. It is not just enough to ask for a rerun election, but there must be an exclusion so the political party suffers from perpetuating the electoral fraud. In respect of the funding of political parties, may I postulate that there should be a forfeiture of any amount in excess of the approved amount to a political party, in addition to penalties being imposed or sanctions being imposed on the persons who are funded the political party in over and above the amount approved to be funded for a political party. I thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you very much, NNC. We are grateful for those two key points. It talked about the proceeds of over sponsoring of campaigns, and that there should be forfeiture proceedings in them. Now, we have the current branch chairman of Kaduna, of Banawa branch, who is no other person than Abdullahi Yahya, Senior Advocate of Nigeria. I understand Leonard Sick chairman hand is up. Please, can you connect him? He's reaching us from Kaduna. His hand has been up. If we can take his contribution, then we'll go back. I think we have one more person, who is Ayodele Adepiton. Those are the two people online. Once we take them, we go back to the general house and then we round up. Leonard, can you hear?
Yes, I can, Paul.
Okay,
Leonard. Good afternoon, good afternoon to my leader, the Learned Senior Advocate, Mr. J.B. Daudu, the coordinator and the coordinator of the Rule of Law Development Foundation. It's usual, like Learned Senior Advocate Mr. Kura said. Mr. Daudu has always blazed a trail. He has always taken on issues that are contentious and has opened a discourse on them with a view to assisting both the operators of the system and the society generally in making improvements on these systems. If any person is qualified and extremely so qualified to comment on the electoral process, Mr. Daudu is one such person. He has been involved at various times in elections, both at the local government level, during the military era, to now under this political dispensation. Now, my worry is as it pertains to proof. Now, the electoral system as we operate it in this country places the burden upon the petitioner to establish his case. And in most cases, the odds are stacked against the respondent. Now, with an electronic system as has been proposed and demonstrated by the lead presenter, Mr. Daudu, my biggest fear is that an average person will then completely lose hope in the system, because it would mean that you will never be able to establish a case. Because even for situations where you had ballot papers used and you could have resort to recounting, the odds were stacked against a petitioner. What more of when you don't have ballot papers? You're relying 100% on the electoral umpire to provide you with everything that you require to establish your case. And I'll take a typical example of Kaduna State. In the last local government elections, they used what was supposed to be an electronic, a hybrid of the electronic and the manual voting system. The voting was done electronically. The transmission of results was physical. Even at that, Mr. Kura will bear me out, that petitioners had a Herculean task trying to establish their cases, because the results from INEC, from the State Independent Electoral Commission could not be contested, because you had situations where they had two different results. And if actually those results came from a voting machine, they shouldn't be. So it is worrisome. I think the electoral umpire should take another look at the proposals made, create a situation in which there's confidence in the system. And like every other person, Justice Ajile, Mr. Ogala had said, and including Mr. Eke Bawa, Learned Senior Advocate of Nigeria, and the others, I think we as the populace, our attitude to elections need to change. No matter what the law contains, we are the operators of it. So unless we also imbibe the culture of doing that which is right, I don't think the laws will just change things for us. I commend the Rule of Law Development Foundation for this discourse, and I pray that God will strengthen them in carrying on this task which they have taken upon themselves. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Leonard Silk. We're grateful for that, all the way from Kaduna. The point is well noted. We move to some of our members. We have a lady online, Louisa. We'll take the lady first. Louisa is a Louisa online. We can hear from her. If she's ready, we'll take her, and then we'll take Ayodele, and then we'll come back to the house.
Thank you very much. My name is Louisa Ekomu Agbonkese. I'm the founder of Echoes of Women in Africa Initiative, a non-governmental women human rights organization that promotes peace and security for women and girls in Africa. I want to stand on existing protocols, if any has been established. I'm actually speaking from Benin City, Edo State. I have been working with women and in rural areas, and our organization has been collaborating with INEC on voter sensitization, civic education, and of course the current call for the new registration. We are still actively part of it. So my contribution is actually on the electronic voting. I'm in support of the electronic voting. I know it's going to be challenging at the beginning, but if you take the issues of COVID-19 and other shocks that might come later in life, and the issue of less gathering of persons, social distancing, it's time we begin to change our culture of voting, electronic electoral culture. So we should migrate to the electronic voting as soon as possible. And I know that women, of course, in the rural area will be left out actively on this. So I want to say that it is time we begin to look at the digital economy of women in the rural area, because even now as we speak, look at, we're using technology to communicate, to join this meeting. But persons in the rural area, because of challenges of electricity, maybe access to iPhone, and of course data, that will be challenging. So by the time we begin to look into improving the digital economy of women in the rural areas, then we'll begin to get there. If the banking system can make use of the BVN and people can register and have BVN, then electronic voting is possible. And if we as people, we are now using technology and we have accepted it as a way of life because of the COVID-19, then instead we'll begin to open up that area for the electorate to have access to electronic voting. So this is my contribution. I know it's going to be challenging at the beginning, but we'll get there at the end of the day. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that alternate view. She is in favor of electronic voting. She says there will be teething problems at the beginning, but in her view, despite the fact that we don't have the infrastructure on ground now, we should begin to test it. I want to move to Ayodele Adekbiton, who is the final person who will contribute online, and then we'll take contributions from here in the Secretariat. We give the resource persons after that an opportunity to respond, and then we'll tie up the program. So Ayodele Adekbiton, that's the last person speaking from online. Ayo.
Good afternoon, sir.
All right, you have the floor. 3 minutes.
All right, thank you so much, sir. I want to especially appreciate the organizer of this program, Mr. JB Dauda, SAN. Thank you so much, and to the rest organizer and to the speakers. I want to appreciate you for the erudite speech. So quickly, my name is Ayodele Samuel Adekbiton. I want to talk about the electronic voting. I'm in support of it. I want to digress a little. I happen to be INEC add-on staff for 2019 general election, and I witnessed so many atrocity that took place starting from the electorate down to the organizer of the election, talking about INEC, and down to some of these the political parties and all of that. So most especially, we know that INEC is the custodian of when it comes to our election, and the onus is on them to make sure we have a free, fair, and credible election. So I don't want us to believe that we have issue with our law. Our law is quite okay, but the implementation of the law we have is the issue. If INEC can truly be sincere with and implement the provisions of the Electoral Act, then the people we have, the electorate, we have confidence in INEC. But in the case whereby you vote and your vote is not counted and all that, it will be issue. So that about that. And coming to electoral voting, we can see that the last NBA election, it was being done, and it was successful, and that was what brought the emergence of the current president, President Olumide Apata. People rallied around. People were complaining by then that they were not used to it, but with time, we have thousands of voters on that particular day. It worked, and the recent election of United States of America, it worked. We need to adapt to where the world is going to, and Nigeria should not be left out of this. I must commend the National Assembly for this initiative, and it is my prayer that the bill will escape through because it work. We can't keep on sleeping one side and expect us to keep on having the same result. The manual voting and all that has not yielded the desired result. Year in, year out, we keep on having issue as to election petition and all that. I believe that with this, it will work. And secondly, INEC need to be transparent about this. There, for the electronic voting to be successful, there must be a side that is available to the society that we can check on our system, on our phone, and look and monitor the results. It should not be hidden. And what happened 2019 should not be the case that INEC denied that they don't have any site as that. So with this, I believe that it will work, and everybody must join hands to make sure that this is a reality. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dekuton, for your view. I hope your position that if electronic voting comes, that there will be no election petition. If your petition come true. So I think we've dealt with everybody online. With your kind permission, Learning 6, I want to take responses from the Secretariat before you respond to any of the issues or comments that have been raised. So if we have anyone who have contribution, please can you indicate by raise of hands? So we have 1, 2, 3 contributions. Unfortunately, this is a legal forum. I will take the lawyers first. Mr. Balogun. Yes. So Mrs. Olga, please, your contribution in 3 minutes.
Thank you very much, Paul. I want to, first of all, thank the coordinator of the Rule of Law Development Foundation for a well-researched paper and very rich presentation done here. I want to just respond to a colleague who spoke online, Louisa, in respect of women. She said she has been on the field working with rural women, and to my surprise, she's supporting electronic voting. I find it very amazing because if you've been on the field, we understand that these women do not know how to use any technology. And even if a few of them may, they do not have the means to own Android phones or whatever will be involved in the electronic voting process. It would then mean that the government may have to provide voting centers for people. And if that will be done, it's going to cost us more money. It's going to be very expensive to organize an election. And apart from the cost implication of having voting centers, have you thought of the privacy or the secret balloting? If somebody has to come to a voting center with everybody's eyes, and then probably the person doesn't even know how to operate the device, and he or she is told this is how to vote, place your finger here. At least with the current system, like my grandmother in the village after an election, if you call her, she will tell you, I did not vote for an umbrella this time around. I pretend for a broom. And then you can figure out that she voted for APC. That's an example. So I wonder what will happen to the village woman who doesn't know how to use any device and has to be told how to vote using the electronic system. In conclusion, I do not think that we've gotten to that point where we can use electronic system of voting yet. If the election is just around the corner, we're talking about 2023 and we're already midway gone into 2021 and no sensitization has started on that yet. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Let's give her a round of applause. She raised a very plausible point. We have not started sensitization, and then we are talking about 2023. And then we are talking about technology. So, sir, you had your hand up. Yes, so you can take your contribution. I don't know if anyone.
Thank you, Mr. Paul, the LUNASIC and the coordinator of this great foundation, which is aimed towards strengthening the rule of law in our legal jurisprudence. Thank you, sir, for the opportunity. In my own contribution, the idea of talking about electronic voting, to me, from the school of thought I may be coming from, and also as a lawyer, I will see it as a scam. This one will be the highest level of the less, the more you look, the less you see. Because if what people are talking about, electronic voting is the one we are experiencing in the NBA, That one will be a very big joke. Politics and election is local. That is what every person, sociologists, lawyers, and operators of the Nigerian political system must understand, because people must be allowed to make their choice. Communities, local government, areas, ethnicity, or what have you, should be allowed to make their choice. Using what you mean by electronic voting may not allow the people to have their way. Because if you consider where all of us are coming from, during elections, people gather and decide on their choice. That is how politics is supposed to be. Now, when you introduce your card, your electronic voting, my grandmother in the village should go to one center to go and cast a vote. She won't even go. Now you remember, money comes in. People will come and still buy them up to go and do the thing on their behalf. What are we talking about? We are trying to strengthen the electoral system by also creating opportunity for politicians to also mess it up. Therefore, I entirely condemn the idea of introducing the electronic voting in the system. Two, the issue of rigging in an election, whether we bring the electoral bill and say that Jesus Christ should come down from heaven and conduct the election, there must be rigging. Rigging is part of election in any political system. The only thing we can do is to strengthen the system to make it lesser. For example, I want to advocate that this system of having a national ID card and having a voter's card should be looked into. The new bill should address that issue. Maybe we can scrap the voter's card and make use of a national ID card. That national ID card have a role, it serves as a means of identification for the people, but it can also extend to the extent that now, when you go to the polling booth on the days of election, you present your national ID card, you'll be accredited because the number is there. One person have one number, because automatically all of us who have the national ID card and the voter's card, we have two different numbers in them. We can maintain one number, and they should carry or lift that data and use it. This is the only way you can also, in a way, although there will be fraud, but you can guarantee a strengthened system, because we have in this country a station whereby people who live towards the borders or just of the country have people from other countries come in and register and become voters for Nigeria. After the election, they go back. Therefore, my contribution is that in support of the submission of the LNSIC, that the idea of electoral amendment bill or whatever, many bills are coming up, should also reflect the mind, the locale, the sentiment, and whatever Nigerians at the local level and even at the higher level thinks about our system. So when we approach it from this angle, I feel we can get to the promised land. But not to say that because when you are doing all these things, strengthening the system, it is making it better. Employments are also created for some people. So thank you and God bless you.
Thank you very much. Very candid and frank view of the current system. So Mr. Balogun, I give you 3 minutes to summarize your own contribution to this point.
Okay, I want to appreciate the convener of this rule of law, so the Electoral Bill of 2021. To be honest, this is the most critical analysis I've witnessed in my entire life. And I thank God the page 29, paragraph 2, gave at least confidence to what I want to talk about. You said it's equally important that such a reform be supported by structural changes in other spheres of the socio-political relations to advance the cause of sustainable democracy in Nigeria. Then the conclusion was that you mentioned lack of these enabling laws is a major factor hindering the full implementation of e-voting in Nigeria. I'd like to quickly go to the root cause. Why is there so much clamor for electoral acts, or maybe the passing of the bill or change of leadership? It has to do with the beating poverty that we are experiencing. There's this quote I read that if Nigeria is a country being ruled by very poor people poor on ideas, intellect, creativity and innovation, concept, hypothesis and theory. That's why we got ourselves to a state of progressive catastrophe. And we are very worried. That's why most of us are concerned about the leaders we are bringing in. I would like to go to the root cause. And thank God I have the support of the literature that the convener provided for us. You said structural, socio-political relation. You mentioned about the structural changes. I'll talk about the structural changes, sir. When we look at Nigeria now, you can't rule out the issue of education. Nobody talks about the minimum requirement that is needed to even go for this electoral position. I didn't see it being captured. We copy our style of democracy from United States and partly Britain. And in the US, the Congress consists of very informed set of people, both the House of Reps and Senate. You see lawyers, technocrats, civil administrators. Those are the ones that go there. That's why when they are making laws, the laws are very effective and vibrant. But in Nigeria, at times, we look at Britain, the House of Commons, the same composition. They are very, very informed set of people. In fact, the laws that are maybe ceremonial, we still know that there was a preparing time that the law bishop, the law lords, the law temper, they are all very informed set of people, and they give advice to the policy that is being made in Britain. When you look at the law lords, they said they were the choice of the Supreme Court until 2009 when they officially have their Supreme Court. It shows a system that is committed, they know what they are doing. Sir, that takes us to the issue of theory, sir. When we talk about the political crisis, I'm still going back to what I'm saying. We have this game theory. When you look at game theory, we have the zero-sum game. We have the non-zero-sum game, whereby even when you lose an election, you still have something to take part. But in Nigeria, we are operating by the zero-sum game, whereby when you lose everything, and when you win and you gain everything. That's why the election becomes a do or die affair. That's why people continue to kill themselves. And unfortunately, our problem is so interwoven that when you are looking at one problem, another one is emanating for it. I don't know why we bring out the issue of immunity clause. Sir, I've been an adult of self, so the tiny, and let me tell you the truth. The executive governors, presidents, all me, the amended time have they circumvented laws, critical laws that are relevant to the progress of the country. How many times have they undermined the power of the judiciary? When I talk about separation of power, the one that talk about the separation of power theory by this Baron G. Montaigne, it's a French name. Yeah. No, sorry. I think the separation of power mentioned the fact that if there is no proper separation of power, the society will go into anarchy. If those people that govern us understood this, honestly, they will respect that law. Because I've never seen when they talk that judges time compromise. How would they compromise when you are faced with a governor that can kill you overnight and nothing will happen? Well, you should look at it. The immunity clause of the executive granted them so much power, and nobody is looking at it. That even if you bring out this bill, unless they bring it expert that will undermine it, if you go back to the local method, that means they will continue to perpetuate the same power. It's just like we have the variables of alternative now. So my advocate is that any day I see the MB, even with their little weakness, are the most vibrant union or association. I see them even as a pressure group, because when they speak from a position of authority. So this your paper confirmed it. Honestly, before everybody shouted electoral act, if they bring it down, the Nigeria problem is solved. But when you gave this your lecture today, I was a bit worried because I don't see solution to this electronic bill. Decided the issue of power, internet, and other things. Then back on the solution, I feel that we have to look at the trend of the rule of law. The independence of the judiciary is necessary, and they should be the hegemony when it comes to balance of power. They need to properly check both the executive and legislature for us to have a way out. And again, to reduce all these problems, because so that we come for it, I also advocate that the ideology of the people should be looked at. You don't have PDP or APC, because there's a book I'll look at all the major political parties, they've been cross-carpeting, moving from one party or the other, pending on their permutations. Then finally, I want to recommend this. Anyhow, there should be a policy to make this electoral this seat politically very unattractive. It's too attractive. When there's so much money involved, honestly, keep on going that poverty cycle until we reach a state. I pray that we'll regret it. That's all I have to say. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Balogun. And so that is what we have heard from both online and from the General House. So, Mr. Bauer, I'll give you the floor to round up your thoughts before our coordinator gives the final remarks. So, if you have any response to the issue, sir.
Thank you very much. It is not at all a forum for us to agree or to disagree with any person that has made any contribution. The essence is for the thoughts to be brought out so that the National Assembly will be able to see it from the viewpoint of every Nigerian. We are not here to say that they must take our views. We are here to make the views known to all. We thank every person that has contributed. We appreciate your reasonings, and we do not have any reasons to disagree with you or to agree with you. The essence is for Nigerians to know that what we have put on the table as a proposed law is something that has challenges, and everybody is free to make his own point on the challenges. For me, I still stand on the view that we have serious problems with this law. If we must use this law, we must make it known to everybody what is the process that will be applied so that it will be demonstrated and understood by all before the law will take effect. Otherwise, if it is close-tied in such a way that it is whatever AMENDED brings up at the end of the day, it may not be the best in the interest of the country. I thank you once more.
Thank you very much, Leonard Sick. And so to round up, I will be giving the mic to the coordinator for his final thoughts based on the reactions of the House. Thank you very much, sir.
Like my learned brother said, it's really not a situation to be put to vote as to which one is good or which one is bad. Even the people who are for it acknowledge that it will be fraught with a lot of difficulty, but they are optimistic that after it fails a few times, you might get it right. But the problem with electioneering is that you have little margin of error, because the margin of error may lead to the displacement of the polity. You may begin to have what they call unity government or non-contraptions that Constitution does not recognize. So that's why, as much as possible, we try at this point in time to sound it to those who are in authority that there is really no margin for error. They must get it right. And the real point is, as my last brother said, Mr. Bauer said, is that the law or the procedure or the process must be well thought out and identified on paper. You cannot make a law and say we are bound by your discretion. Anything you pull out, then we can as well go and watch the magician pulling out a rabbit from a hat. So if on the occasion he wants to pull out handkerchief, he will pull out handkerchief for you instead of rabbit. You never know what comes out of a magician's bag. So INEC must not reduce itself to be magicians. We do not want to be, and every individual who occupies the high office of conducting an election knows that posterity will actually be the ultimate judge. I remember in those days, during the Operation Wet, The INEC of those days really had it very bad for a long time. And not until 1999 before they stopped making references to those large-scale errors of those days. So I will only say that we have quite a number of copies of this write-up. I would implore Mr. Bauer to reduce his thoughts into writing, and when we do a second edition, or when we do a compilation of all our webinars for the year, so that we can have his input directly on it, including Mr. Okoye, who was caught up in a very sensitive meeting. He would have wished to be here, but the demands of his office prevented him from coming. I was called to a very high-powered meeting at the last minute. So at this opportunity, I wish to thank Mr. Bauer for finding time to join us in this Zoom webinar. I thank all the senior advocates who attended online and who are patient enough to follow us from beginning to the end. We're most grateful. And all those who also are online, we acknowledge you. If you do need copies of this material here, you can contact Chidiogo Mercy. I think our telephone number is available in the manner in which you are invited. So, Lansing Advocate, ladies and gentlemen, AIT has gone, and those covering this event, I wish to thank you all for making this webinar on this sensitive topic of the electoral bill a resounding success. I wish you all the best. Thank you, Mr. Makonjola Balogun, for coming all the way from Lokoja to participate. Your views are well noted, and I do wish you all the best. We do have some just small refreshment to wet your throats in the hope that I'm sure in 2 or 3 weeks' time, we'll be having another webinar on technology and the law, so that we can then take a break for preparatory for the Criminal Justice Reform Conference. So I thank you very much. Please, let's also give ourselves a round of applause. Thank you.